In this video, we're going to show you how to get the most out of the Mavic 3's zoom lens. Now, some of the tips here are Mavic 3 specific, but a lot of them apply to any kind of zoom filming. We're going to show you some creative concepts to get the most from your drone. So let's roll the montage and we'll come back and have a chat.
What's a man got to do to get a woman like you? What's a man got to do to touch a woman like you? What's a man got to do to get a woman like you? If I have to beg, or if I have to plead, or if I have to fight, or if I have to bleed, or if I tell a lie.
Stuart Carroll here, pleasure to talk to you as always. Now, the first thing we did when we got our hands on a Mavic 2 Zoom years ago was take that drone to the top of a mountain and try and recreate some of those epic 90s and 2000s helicopter gyro-stabilized aerial shots. They're done on zoom lenses. You can't get a helicopter close to things, and as a consequence, you get these amazing parallax effects. So yes, it is cool that a 7x zoom lens lets you get close to things, but from a filmmaking perspective, the real value is being able to take advantage of the compression that takes place between your foreground, your midground, and your background, throwing in a little bit of rotation so we can see those layers moving at different speeds and really taking advantage of that parallax. So tip number one, create depth in your shots, foreground, midground and background elements. Because you're flying a drone, you might be up high pointing your 7x zoom at the ground. In all likelihood, that's not going to create any layers in your image. Get the drone down a bit, see if you can get those foreground and midground and background elements in your frame. The second tip concerns camera movement. Because we're zoomed all the way in, we don't have the wide angle field of view that gives us the sense of motion we're accustomed to when flying a drone. As a consequence, we need to find a new way of creating motion in our shot. And building on this idea of layers, if we do rotational movements around a subject, we get this tremendous sense of parallax, much like those Hollywood aerial shots I showed you previously. You can still get good results flying forwards and backwards, but because of the compression that takes place when using a zoom lens, our motion is compressed. So you're really going to need those foreground elements to give the camera a sense of movement as it travels through space. Now that you understand how to create depth in your frame and the kind of camera movement that complements this zoom lens cinematography, you can use your drone much like you would use a handheld gimbal. You can get close to your subject and do nice rotations around your subject for those nice cinematic moves. And the added benefit here, in the case of the shots we were filming the other day, I didn't need to worry about tripping over rocks or moving fast enough or whether or not there was a pavement I could actually stand in. I just slid the drone around as carefully as possible whilst keeping Alina in the centre of the frame. Telephoto focal lengths introduce a phenomenon that we're not super familiar with as aerial cinematographers, and that is shallow depth of field. If your subject is filling the frame, shall we say, somewhat close to the camera, there is a possibility that your background will be out of focus. As a consequence, it's absolutely essential that you remember to focus the camera. Now here on the Mavic 3 we have two focusing options, autofocus and manual focus. If you have the camera set to autofocus, when you press record it will set focus automatically, which is good, but that autofocus is continuous, and this is something I really hope DJI will change in future. Back in the day you would get autofocus continuous and autofocus single. Autofocus continuous continuously hunts for focus throughout a shot. Now that's fine when you've got a wide angle and everything is in focus, but now that you have the possibility of shallow depth of field and certain elements of the frame being in focus and certain elements not, you can't afford to have the computer in there hunting for focus during a shot. It needs to find a focus point, stick with it and stay with it. Unfortunately, the hunting nature of this continuous autofocus ruined many of our shots, so we definitely recommend that you use manual focus. Added to that, go into your camera settings and select focus peaking, so when we are focusing manually, we have a better sense of where that focus point should be. Now we have a fixed and hopefully accurate focus point, we don't need to worry about the camera hunting during your shot. The longer the focal length of the camera on the drone, the harder it is to control the movement of that drone. Longer focal lengths enhance vibrations, jitters, jerky stick movements. So switch the controller onto Cine and make sure you're moving those sticks as smoothly as possible. Assuming you're looking for a nice image quality, then stick with the 7x telephoto lens. That gives tons of lens compression for those nice rotational parallaxy movements. If you go to the digital zooms of 14x or 28x, it's going to be very hard to control the camera, and also you're deteriorating the picture quality quite significantly anyway. Anyway, as you've seen, with a little bit of understanding, you can get amazing shots, and hopefully we've inspired you with whatever drone you've got to go out and do the same. And we will see you next time.